got a 4L60E here. I've come to realizing all I've done stuff on the 4L60E, some videos. I never did a full rebuild. So we're going to do one. This one here we're going to put an LS kit. It means a kit with clutches, band. Put a aluminum 1-2 accumulator in it. Got the overdrive sprag, pump bushing, case bushing, both my stator bushings that they did not send me, filter, EPC solenoid, both shift solenoids that they did not send me, a rear planet set, and the customer wanted the sun shell. There's nothing wrong with the one that was in there, but he'd been looking on the internet and saw that it's a big failure point, and yes it is. He wants one, so we put one in for him, even though his would have been just fine. Get going on this here, and I forgot I got to call Greg. Another big failure point on these trannies is this shaft right here. When they went to the 300mm, I had a real problem. And there's several different designs. You got a rotor here for your input speed sensor. So you had one that had the rotor and moved the sealing ring lands up. You had one that had the sealing ring lands up but no speed sensor, but had the hole in the pump for it. You have the one that has no speed sensor ring, the rings are down further, and 300mm. Then you have, oh geez, there's been so many different iterations of this. Then you got the 298mm shaft. And then you got all the regular 700 ones. Some of those you can change out in the earlier 4L60Es. Some you can't. So you just gotta have to be real careful matching up stators and drums. So this one does have the speed sensor. And a little note on your speed sensor: you get a input speed sensor code on this transmission, just about guarantee you it's not the input speed sensor. You got a bad computer. So let's get going here. This O-ring goes down in here. You got this rubber goes in the back of the drum here. This seals your output shaft for lube to your planetaries. Let's see. You got your early ones would have aluminum pistons in here. And just assembly here, you got the spring cage. This piece here, your forward piston, just kind of twist it down in there. I'm going to line this up with this, kind of hold up on this. I'm going to put these right here, and this in one of those grooves. While you're holding up on it, get your lip seal tool in the middle, go around the center of that and get it started around. and just shove it down. That bottom piston is your 3/4. That piston is your forwards. This piston is your overruns. Your spring cage.
Hey, now listen to the phone. What is that?
If you look on your snap ring, there's a taper on the tip. The taper goes up. Alright. You want this steel first. Your overruns. These two clutches. Another steel. Another clutch. You got your backing plate. Choose the side that was down against it. Put your backing plate in, and you got a wavy plate that goes next. And then you got a regular steel that goes next. And you got your sprag races. And put one of these oiling rings down first. No. Just don't be like that. There we go. And you'll notice that there's this thing on this end of the sprag that goes down. You got that like that. Put this on here. Kind of work those dogs down into the race while you're twisting in a counterclockwise motion. Pops in. Put your other oiling ring on. There we go. Got that down. Put that on there. You got this snap ring. Goes in this groove right here. Pop that in there. Should be able to hold this. Turn this clockwise. Locks counterclockwise. You got this bearing. Goes down like that. This sits on top. In these real late model ones, this sun gear would have a groove in it. Somebody's already replaced this. This has actually been rebuilt at the dealership before. It's got the tag on it. But this would clip into here and be held onto here. This one has been, like I said, been replaced. I can go ahead, I can stick it on there. It's going to stay there. I'm going to go ahead and put it on there. Normally it would be there anyway. As long as it'll stay up in there, I'll put it up in there. If it won't, then I'll set it down in the planet myself. And we start with the forward clutch. Alternate steels and clutches. Put our pressure plate on. There's different ones. As long as that comes up to the bottom of that snap ring groove, you're about perfect. You want the smaller snap ring, goes in here. I always put it on the opening on one lug here. Make sure you got a full lug on it. And we're good. Well, the late ones have this type of steel on the back. These feet fit behind these right here, so make sure they are behind there. Your clearance is not going to come out properly. And you got your 3/4 clutches and steels. The early ones had thinner steels here, and they had different backing plates. So as long as you get your clearance to come out okay, you're okay. You want at least 6 clutches in here. Put your backing plate on the top. As long as you're at the bottom of that snap ring groove, you are about perfect. And we want this snap. We do the same thing. You want at least a full lug on the snap ring. It's about perfect. There again on these ceiling rings, I do not replace them unless they don't fit snug in the stator. As long as they fit snug on the stator, we're good. I'm just going to leave them. You don't need to change them unless you just want to. And then you got the sizing tool and all that. Otherwise you'll be using a hose clamp to size them, and it can take a while. This washer here, you can put a 70, number 70 in them. Usually they got about a 68 or 69. And this is 68. If you got a 70, you can almost always put a 70 in it and be just fine. This bearing goes like this. I can't tell you how many I've seen come in that flip the other way, and it'll wipe this bearing out. It'll go for a while. Alright, your reverse drum. The lips are going to face towards you. You got 2 snap rings in here that look almost identical. The thinner one goes towards the low reverse spring, and this one goes on the reverse. Alright, on these reverse drums, where this cushion plate goes, normally goes with the dish up. Where it sits down in the drum there, it'll sit there and it'll beat a little groove in it, and this will get hung up in it. So I just take it and I flip it over. And then we got our flat snap ring. On top. Okay, late model front planets take this style bearing. Early ones take this style. And it changes this hub here. So the depth of that hub is 130 thousandths. And you take that bearing and it's going to go on the back side of here. If it was an early one, you're going to put the bearing on here. If this bearing goes on the back, this sun shell here will fit either bearing style or washer style. And a 4-tab plastic washer or snap ring is going to hold our center support in, or center support. Our rear planet sun gear or rear planet. The bearing that goes on here. Our ring gear. And this bearing goes on the back. Lower reverse piston. Our spring cage and our snap ring. Late models only had a single spring, inner spring. Earlier ones had a double spring, an inner and an outer. Most of these are plastic. Not a bad idea to put aluminum one in there. Blue O-ring goes on the outside cover of your servo. And your sealing ring. The next to the largest one goes on here. You're going to put these where they fit, just like that. This longer goes down into the cover. This one takes the red. There are several different sizes of this in here, which gives you different sizes of this. Just find the one that fits. Never ever ever use a number 554. It's down inside there. The Corvette servo is the smallest one. The largest one of these goes on the outside here. spring to hold it in, and our return spring. Always put this back. I've got a lot of units I've gotten from these transmission rebuilding facilities like Jasper and places like that. I don't understand why they're leaving that spring out. This is what usually comes in the 1-2 accumulator. Alright, need to have your spark mechanism loose back here so that your actuator can move back out of the way. And we're going to change the case bushing here. Want that bushing to be below flush. In my opinion, bare minimum, you need to change case bushing, pump bushing, and both stator bushings. This tab right here is going to fit in this notch in the case. Just turn it until you feel it drop down in there. Spring cage, taper the tips of our snap ring up. And there's a tool for putting this in, makes it a lot easier. There's other ways of doing it. This is the easiest way. Get the snap ring, get one side started in, and then just work it around. And our rear planet ring gear. Rear planet. We've got our cushion plate, and this tab is going to face right here. And this notch is going to go to the same spot. This clip, it's going to sit in the case just like that. Put your little grease to hold it in there. Fits right down in this spot right here on the case. We're about the 5 o'clock position. big opening on your sprag assembly. It's going to go over here. You have to line the center teeth up with your rear planet. Pop it into place. Put the opening of your snap ring behind that clip. Make sure it's all the way in. If it's not all the way in, it'll break them lugs right out of that case. Your rear sun gear, our 4-tab plastic washer, sun shell, front planet ring gear, our front planet, our output shaft. We're going to put a snap ring on this groove right here on the front of that front planet. You want the taper of your tips up towards you. Take our band, these fingers, you gotta sit in this spot right here. I'm gonna lead the band halfway out, kind of like that. Make sure our sun gear's in there. I'm gonna set our drum assembly in. You know it's down when you can hold down on your reverse drum and you can move your input drum up and down. Then we want our band anchor. We put our band in the hole. We put our anchor through the case, making sure we got a hold of the band. Alright, put the servo in now, and you can check your band. Pry out on your cover. And make sure clearance looks good. Now the ones that have this molded seal that goes up here on the pump, you got to put the bell housing on and tighten it first before you tighten your pump. If it has an O-ring on the pump, you can just go ahead and put your pump in, then put your bell housing on. We put our pump gasket in. These two holes are going to go right here. Here, rebuild our pump. I also see these rebuilding places, they leave this seal retainer out. And you want that seal retainer on. 4L60 has always been horrible about blowing front seals out. because they put the relief holes in here, it doesn't change the fact that it likes to blow out seals. The late style bushings have this special coating on them. There's a lip that keeps the bushing from going out the front. Don't drive the bushing into it. You want to stop right at the base of that. Save your rubber and your plastic piece. There's a spring. I marked this just because it makes it quicker, and that little mark where that little tab goes. This seal retainer only fit one. You stick our spring back in. And there's an O-ring down in here. Look at your coating on this right here. If it starts getting real shiny and silver like this, it's starting to wear out. Once it gets past this coating, it'll wear out real quick. I don't never put the new rubber and plastic on these. I find that they stick up too high. You put the rubber back here and the plastic up there. Push in on that, put your pivot pin in, make sure your pivot pin is not wore out. They do make a special tool to put this spring in there, but I don't find that I need it. Put your vane ring in. This will only line up one way with these tabs. And your rotor. Put that in. Look on the back side of your vane here, you can see where these rings have been riding. Just put that back towards where it was. Lake pumps are 13 vanes, and they'll say that they take a 13 vane. Do not put a 13 vane in one that does not say. The rear early ones had 8 vane pumps in them. You can change that out to the 10. And in fact, it's advisable. Your other guide ring in. filter in here. Takes the largest O-ring that there is in this kit right here. And make sure our PR valve moves, our lockup valve moves. In the 95 through, oh, it was about 97, somewhere in 97 they quit. This little capsule right here has a spring and ball and a plastic keeper in there, and you'll notice it looks a lot different than this, and it's got a little orifice in it. You need to pop that orifice out. I got a video on it, and drill that capsule out of the back of it and put it back in. Take the spring ball capsule or the plastic part out of the back of it and then put it back in and stake it in place. That can cause one of your causes for your 1870 code. And change the seal out for the filter. Always change this out. I found that even if it fits kind of snug when it's cold, when it gets hot it'll expand and the filter gets loose in there. I'm going to line this up with this over here. I found there's no need to take your input speed sensor out. If it has one, they don't all have it.
I've been watching YouTube videos.
And you don't have to have this lineup band, but it makes life a whole lot easier. So you want to line up your bolt holes, get them pretty much even, and tighten the band down. Thirteens on the pump. Change these two bushings. Bushings are horrible about wearing out, and it allow that drum to sit down and ring cut that stator back there. Another reason for your clutches burning up in your drum. No need to change these rings on the pump stator either, unless they just look horrible. sure we fit on the drum good. Yep. Alright, if you had an O-ring, it would go out here. That's what this is. Washer on. In play is done by that selective washer on the input drum. Filter inlet goes towards the bottom. Our O-ring on our shaft for lockup. And there's O-rings on the back of the pump bolts. Make sure this is lined up. Start our bolts. Leave that loose. Put our bell housing on. It can be easy to screw some of these up, especially you don't use the right socket, and then you're chiseling it out. It's a 50 Torx Plus. Real late model ones use a socket like that. MTS-4 is the number I got off of this one, and I believe I bought it off of the Matco truck. At the time they didn't offer a socket, all they had was the bit, and it ain't cheap. Now they got a socket. I don't know how cheap it is now, but it was like I want to say it was like $80 just for that bit. Tighten our pump down, make sure we turn nice and free, make sure it plays good. Park back up in there, tighten that down. Take this check ball right here, take it out of the case, put it in that spot right there. Take that slide hammer. We're doing pilot bearings on standards, and I got a bit here for from Tech Pack fits all. Go down here and pull its capsule out. Make sure you get it in the spot that it goes in. It's got these little tabs down in there. It's got to go, you start it on there and you turn it halfway and then it'll pull it out. If you get kind of on the edge of it, it'll just pull those dills out, and then you're using a drill bit to get it out. There's a ball inside this capsule. Save this capsule. Here's a cut plug that you can buy. I'll try to get you the part number for it. I'll take that. Drive that down. And let's see, we need to get you. You want to drive that capsule, that plug down in that passage right there, but don't go too far. You're driving too hard and it'll start driving it through the case and it'll deform it and it'll leak. Guide pin in. Put our 3/4 accumulator in. I'll make sure there's a cut plug down in here, orifice cut plug, make sure it's in there. Our 3/4 accumulator spring, you can put different kind of springs in there. You can even block it off if you want to, try to make the shift firmer. I always just put it back the way it was. These late models, the computer compensates for it anyway. Let's see. Alright, valve body time a bit. Let's filter in the lockup valve or lockup solenoid. Take that out, throw it away. Things like to leak anyway, so always just put a little silicone around them, stick it in. Okay, let me get the valve body. See it? All you need is a drill bit that fits down inside there. This one's a 315,000. What we're going to do is we're just going to take the edge off of that right there. good enough. You don't need to take very much. And let me go clean this up. Alright. First thing we're going to do is make sure our 1-2 accumulator shift valve is free. If it's not free, I got a video on that. Go about doing that. Then we're going to go over here to our Pwm Lockup Valve. We're going to block it off. Doesn't really matter how you do it. They sell a valve that you can put in there if you want to. The early ones had a spring like this, but they had a different shaped valve. I found that you can take one of these balls and come out of this capsule. You can put on the end of the spring and that'll hold it in there. They do make a spring that you can put in there. It's stiffer. All that you're concerned with is blocking the valve. The design before this that had there's a little bit different shaped valve. You can put a 1/4-inch ball in here and a 1/4-inch ball in the other end. Put the spring in between and it'll block it just fine. This one here, I think I use another large ball. Let's see how this one comes out. I think it may be too big. I might have to go a little bit smaller. This is 339 thousandths. I'm going to put that. We're going to put that in this end. I'm just going to put a little grease in there, hold that in place. Drop my spring back in. Drop my valve. And my end plug. And it looks like it's going to come out just perfect. That'll work just perfect. Make sure our valve is free for our EPC. We're good there. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take this check ball out. Throw the capsule away. Let's see. The ball happens to measure 308. We're going to take that and we're going to put that right there. And we got 6 more balls that go in here. A little grease to hold that in place. Change my solenoid. There's 2 different positions on this solenoid. The Hummers and the Colorados. They have a different accumulator set up, and you've got to turn the solenoid to a different position. It'll be facing more up like that. This little tab right here is going to sit just like that. you get this in the right position, the solenoid will be able to turn just a little bit. Like that. Alright. Get back around here on your gaskets and your plate. This is a gasket that's going to go over here for the Colorados and the Hummers. And it takes a different plate and all that kind of stuff. Your orange on your relay kits, your orange stripes are for the bonded separator plates. Just buy the bonded separator plate from the dealership. It's not expensive, it's like 15 bucks. Usually what happens is it starts coming apart over here. It's not worth all the time it takes to take the gasket off and use these damn things. As far as I'm concerned, it's a waste of money to put these in the kit. Now that leaves the rest of these gaskets. On the late trannies, if you have a number and 2 letters, you use the 2-letter valve body gasket. If you have just 2 letters, then you use the gasket that it'll have just a C and a V. The V goes to the valve body, the C goes to the case. You can make sure that plate's on there. You're going to take 2 of our bolts, one put right here, one right here, that lines everything up. You got these 3/8, they go down here. On the Hummer, you'll have Torx that goes right here. You got 2 short. One long. Make sure you get the center. 8's down there. 10's up here. Put your linkage in. You're going to loop that in this slot that goes in. Slide that in. On the earlier ones, there's a little bracket that goes here for your filler tube, your dipstick to stop it. Here again, make sure these 2 are started. That lines everything up. Your bolts with the 8mm heads go here, here, and here. Tighten these 2 up first. Change our 2 shift solenoids. This one here is spring loaded. Change the shift solenoids on damn near every one, as long as it's over 100,000. But really, I change them no matter what. EPCs have changed anything over 150,000. Usually they're getting replaced anyway too. So. The rest of these don't fail that often. You loop this tab underneath the pressure switch manifold. Later models, they get rid of this. A 3-2 downshift solenoid. Two 10s up here. Pwm solenoid, we've effectively neutered that thing. It doesn't actually work anymore. All it's doing is telling the computer that the electrical circuit is good. Detent, 13 millimeter. Different filters. The late models have an all plastic filter. There was a point there where they had, when they had this bracket in here, it was a half metal, half plastic. It had the angle on it so that it fit between there. The early ones were shallow. You don't want to put a shallow on a deep pan. You don't know how many times I see that. They come in here with a shallow filter on a deep pan unit. We'll get the pan. And I don't know why, but sometimes this camera just stopped recording right in the middle of it. And it did it on this one, and I had literally like 5 minutes left. You need to see me bolt my pan down. 6 bolts on the tail housing, 15 millimeters. Has an O-ring like this, except for it's got an orange on the outside. This is the early tail housing gaskets. The orange one's the late. The lever seal goes in like that. There's a tool. We're taking it out. This is the one for the long one. This is the long one for the short one. The install tool for the short one. This is the install tool for the long one. I got them off the Snap-on truck 100 million years ago. On this shaft out here where the neutral switch goes, be sure where the nut and the lever goes for the cable, it leaves a little burr there, and be sure and take some sandpaper or a buffing wheel on your little die grinder and buff that off. If you don't do that, when you go to put the neutral switch back on, it's going to cut some plastic off the neutral switch, and the neutral switch is not going to read properly. On the long shaft ones, you can just push this on there and it's real easy. You're not going to cut it. On the short ones, you're going to have to start it on there, get your little pocket screwdriver, which I don't know what happened to mine. No, it's in my hand. And work around the inside there and get it started up on the shaft. Don't just shove it in there, you cut it. Other than that, I think we're good to go.